Thank you, Kelly. Bravery and personal sacrifice is easy to do when it comes to the things we know we want. But what about the surprises in life? Riley Day tackles this question with her breathtaking entry into motherhood, The Garden of Becoming.
From the ages of 15 to 23, I only ate cheese if the alternative was a feeding tube. At 29, it is my inability to finish a bowl of macaroni and cheese that alerts me to the fact that I am pregnant. A drugstore test will confirm this, and as I sit on the edge of the bathtub waiting, I think of Christ's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Lord, be it thy will, let this cup pass over me. Let this cup pass over me. In the 90 seconds it takes for the results, I reflect on doctors' visits, stern conversations that warn my self-starvation will leave me irrevocably infertile. A phone call from 2011. I'm sorry, but it's highly unlikely you'll have children. I pick up the wand from the porcelain, turn it over in my hand. Let this cup pass over me. My heart drums in my ears as I see the tiny pink plus sign. This is my cross to bear. That night, I drink red wine and chain smoke cigarettes on the porch until I vomit crimson into a waste paper basket. Staring at the crumbs on gum wrappers stuck to the bottom, I whisper a hollow confession that echoes back in my ears. I do not want this baby. I hope for stomach cramps and spots of blood. I go to bed thinking of all the women with empty wombs who are praying for missed periods. I reflect on the lost pregnancies of those close to me. Shame wells up inside me high enough that I can feel it in the back of my throat. That night, I dream I give birth to a deformed, multi-limbed child that has fed off the hate of its host. A creature too ugly for even a mother to love. The gel the ultrasound technician spreads on my abdomen is surprisingly warm. It is a small comfort. She presses the wand down firmly on the soft flesh between my hip bones, shifts it with a purpose. I remember a night, still living at home, of anxiety-induced insomnia. National Geographic on my parents' living room television. There are grasslands in Africa and Australia that burn themselves to the root before the rainy season. Vast expanses of flame and charred soil. It is the only way they can grow new life. Towards the bottom of the screen before us, a static white mass interrupts the dark cavern that is my uterus. It curves up slightly at Wilby head and Wilby toe. Something budding in the dead earth that is my body. We are midpoint in my pregnancy when a midwife tells us that for the past 20 weeks, I have only lost weight. She says it is not the direction I need to be going. I think of all the times I have heard those exact words from nutritionists and psychologists and eating disorder specialists. And just like with those past audiences, I convincingly feign concern and surprise. What I feel is pride. It is a feeling that crumbles later that evening as I think of all the skipped breakfasts and hours of fasting over the past 4.5 months. I remember all the times morning sickness was an excuse, and all the times that it wasn't. In the past, anxiety had always worked in tandem with my disordered eating. Now it rides free, birthing a new fear that I am starving my child. What have I done? I begin to eat with a sense of urgency unknown to me before that moment. Shredded cheese from the bag while meat is cooking, grapes and crackers while I steam rice and vegetables, large spoonfuls of ice cream. I consume every food group. This is my first act of love, Against my better judgment, we choose to reveal the results of our anatomy scan at my childhood home. My nephew breaks a piñata open with a bat. Pink confetti falls around me like the ash of some fire I did not intend to set, and my fear compounds on itself as I am confronted with how ill-fitted I am to be mother to a daughter. I am, after all, a daughter myself. A daughter with a mother who wept over me in hospital beds, who wept about me on the couches of therapists, who wept with me in waiting rooms and lobbies and parking garages. In what ways will I agonize over this child? This is my penance. Later that evening, I strip naked in front of the bathroom mirror. I stare at myself, squeezing handfuls of the flesh on my thighs and hips. There is guilt over what I hold there, but more guilt over the fact that even now, 15 years from where it all began, I am locked hidden in the bathroom looking for all the ways I hate myself. How will I show her to love herself completely when I only ever consider myself as a sum of my parts? How will I teach her to trust her own judgment when the duality of my mind leaves me paralyzed? How will I encourage her to forgive her own mistakes when I wear my past like an anchor around my neck? These are the questions for which I have no answers. We give her a name, and it is our first gift to her, Ezra. It means helper, healer. I pray she wears it like a banner over her life, that any help she gives is never at her own expense, that when she has to heal, it is never from wounds I will inflict. My hopes for her grow, and logically, love follows. But just like anything else I have ever cared for or about, there is a direct correlation between the intensity of my love for her and the severity of my irrational fear that something terrible will happen to her. I begin Googling miscarriages at 22 weeks gestation, 23, 25, 28, 34. Each morning over coffee and peanut butter toast, I discover new ways she can die. And instead of my findings remaining mere cautionary tales, sad stories of the lost babies of strangers, they take root in my mind as inevitabilities. I am looking at my future. Fear becomes a character in my life, as real as the daughter I have become convinced I will never meet. It follows behind me on midday walks, breath like sulfur on the back of my neck. It snakes its fingers around my throat in fitful sleep. It houses itself inside me until it is the eyes through which I see. Ravens circling the hospital, waiting to claim what is theirs. A tiny pine coffin, a headstone in the autumn rain, and me, a childless mother. In the heat of summer, I eat fruit until the juices run down my chin, consume half a brick of Gouda cheese in one sitting, balance a carton of my ice cream on my belly without shame. I need to give her a fighting chance. If nothing else, my child has inherited my tendency to be late. 11 days after my due date has come and gone, the midwife explains the process of induction, and while I nod intently from the hospital bed, my internal dialogue is, I am not ready. Have I done enough? Have I done good enough? My contractions begin during Final Jeopardy and continue with increasing intensity throughout the night. I endure them silently. Too concerned I am with waking her father, never wanting to take up too much room, afraid of inhabiting more emotional real estate than is my fair share. I do not allow my gaze to fall from the monitor for more than a minute or two. With each small spike or dip of her heart rate, I think, this is when you lose her. As dawn cracks through the small window of our room, I can no longer speak. I can barely breathe. And it is then that I realize that for the past 41 weeks and 5 days, Nourishing Ezra was not only keeping her safe in my womb, but a means of preparing her for the transition through the threshold of my body and into a world that will change simply by her being in it. Have I done enough? Have I done good enough? Pain becomes my companion, my guide. It braids my weaknesses into the rope I grasp through the stormy waters of the next several hours. Each wave of it propels her closer to me. This pain has a purpose. She will be here in minutes, and it won't be until much later that I realize the pain long ago exorcised the fear that had taken up residency within me, cast it out, and planted capability in its place. I am capable. My body is now, finally, a vessel I can trust. And as it brings her forth into awaiting hands, there is no room for thoughts of the uneaten or the undone. My hot tears are watering this garden of becoming, and fear holds no root in its soil. Her head finds its home in the crook of my neck, fingers kneading into my chest. A tiny cry, her first greeting, and it satiates any hunger, quells all unrest. She is warm. She is wanted. She is mine.